Now, I want to read you the words of Michael Flatley. A few years ago, I was struck down with a mystery illness. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't diagnose the problem. How could they ever then prescribe a cure? I was tired, I had no energy, I couldn't work, and I had to cancel a tour. I was beginning to think I would never be back to full health. Then I met Michael Doherty and things began to change for the better. Following my first meeting with Michael, I immediately felt better. After an hour of energy healing treatment, I felt revived and was able to go for a long walk, something I had been unable to do for months. My energy had shifted and now was beginning to flow again. So, who is Michael O'Doherty? Well, he happens to be sitting across me in the studio. His book, Just Imagine, A Life Without Illness, has just been published. Michael, good morning.
Good morning to you, Pat.
Now, aside from your connection with Michael Flatley, you've also been given the public backing of Sarah Newman, she of the Dragon's Den. Others might remember you from an appearance on The Late Late Show back in 1990, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes' time. What is it exactly that you do?
Well, what we explained, Pat, is what we explained then in 1990 on The Late Late Show was that, the body is made up of energy. If the energy becomes imbalanced, then the body becomes ill. And what we have developed, which we initially studied in Yugoslavia with Zdenko Domancic, what we have developed is a way, a system of skills to work with the energy system of the body. And our understanding is that as the energy flows through the body, that in some way it has the intelligence or is capable of in some way recalibrating the system and allowing the body to begin to function better again.
You're saying it's like rebooting a computer, that sort of thing?
In a simple way, it's like that. That if, for example, you have a virus in your computer, you don't see the virus. You just know that it's printing out something that's not correct. And what we do is technically go back and we look at what might be causing that. And it's like you're downloading a whole new information. You're re-establishing the flow of energy and it's booting it up.
Now, years ago, when electroconvulsive therapy was used, that was the theory that regular medical science was taking to the brain. If you put a massive current into the brain, that it recalibrated the brain and people started from scratch. It worked for some, it didn't work for others. But this is different because you don't actually put hands on people.
Correct, yes. And this is the great thing about it, even going back to just briefly what you were saying, Pat. Professor Nordenström of Sweden, he was a pioneer of needle biopsy. He was an eminent medical professor. And he said that the body has this, what he called a biologically closed electrical circuitry system. What he was saying was that that technically this was the energy system. And in the European Journal of Surgery, that's what he said. He said, we must give the Oriental view of chi some consideration. Because he said, if this is what he felt was the foundation of health. And it was responsible for regulating the internal organs and the functioning of the organs. And when we do what we do without touching the body sometimes, we can see people reacting, that we're working on this energy field that surrounds the body. And it sometimes, I suppose, for people looking at it, I think maybe it might be crazy. But, people respond in different ways. Not everybody, but people respond in different ways. They feel different sensations. But what we're specifically working on is what we see as this energy field that surrounds the body.
You're saying that people, without you laying a hand on them, can feel something?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this was demonstrated, I suppose, in any of the TV programs that we've done, and particularly going back to...
You did Nationwide recently.
We did Nationwide recently, and this was also demonstrated there that the people saw us working around the body and not touching the body. And I often say to people, you have a radiator in your house. You don't have to touch it to know if it's hot on or not, because you can feel the heat radiating from the radiator. The same applies to the body. It radiates or gives off specific information. And what has been established a lot by science is that this information that we experience in our lives stores itself within this energy field, and that unless we get that energy system balanced, unless we get that right, the body just can't recover.
You're saying, in effect, there's a system that overlays the normal electrochemical system. I mean, we know that chemical changes happen in the body. That's why people take drugs, because they interfere with the chemistry of the body.
Correct.
And we know that neurologically we're talking about the interchange between electrical currents going up and down the nerves and chemistry.
Correct.
And you were saying that there is
there is an additional electrical system, and this is what Nordenström, this is what Professor Valerie Hunt in Sweden and many other eminent scientists were saying. There is a separate or an independent electrical system that governs all that, and we would see that as the energy system. And it's when that energy system is brought back into balance that the body's physiology then begins to change, and then the potential for recovery exists within that environment.
What does a person feel when you treat them?
Sometimes they feel heat, sometimes they feel tingling, sometimes they feel coolness, but it's not important what they feel, because we would, for example, if a baby of 6 months old comes into me with colic or something like that, we work to re-establish the flow of energy that can in some way relax that child, and that in some way can help the digestion of that child. So sometimes it's not necessarily about
Would it work on a skeptic?
Absolutely. It has worked on skeptics, and often we get skeptics, people coming into our clinic. Not now. I mean, initially when we started, a lot of people were skeptical, and there are lots of people out there who are still skeptical of this, Pat. Let me be very clear about that. And
I mean, the Sunday Times did a thing yesterday, Flatley stress therapy dubbed nonsense by a Professor Ernst. Who says, you should have done clinical trials if you were going to make claims about this.
You see, one of the difficulties around that is, what is the criteria for trials around this field? Nobody has ever set that up except the likes of Professor Nordenson, except the likes of Valerie Hunt and these people who have already shown that working at this level has a specific effect on the body. And the unfortunate thing about it, Pat, for us, is that we've been involved in this field for 20 years, and people coming to our clinics every day, that's all we do. People come to our clinics, we help them as best we possibly can, and a lot of the time we don't have time for clinical trials, but we would welcome any assessment of our work. Absolutely.
What, the before and after kind of thing. Absolutely. And unfortunately, Pat, from a media perspective, you see, we've always done this, whether it's going back to the Late Show or the other TV programs that we do, they got the people. We treated them and exposed the results. So, so there was nothing, you didn't select the people.
No, absolutely. At the time of the
treatment.
Absolutely.
Is there a religious dimension to this? Do you have to be a religious person for this to work?
Absolutely not. This is non-denominational, Pat. It's an energy system. It's real, and society just need to waken up to that reality that our bodies are made up of energy, and working at an energetic level is fundamental to our health. It's fundamental to our development and evolution, and that's not negating the value of everything else, because we see this not replacing anything. We see this as a cog in the chain of rehabilitation. We quite clearly see the value of medicine and support their position.
Now, one of the concerns that many people would have is, suppose someone has cancer and they hear about you and they decide, okay, and I've heard of people, eating coffee beans and doing all sorts of stuff because they hear it's a folk cure for cancer, and then, they come to disaster later on. I mean, the question of someone abandoning traditional therapy, classical, contemporary medical treatment in favour of energy healing.
We would be totally against that, Pat. And can I just quote you on the page 123 of my book, of a lady who had actually came to the clinic, Anna Correa. In December 2007, Anna chose to stop her chemotherapy, a decision that was met with much opposition. This is very important. I remember I had a lot of arguments with the doctors about it. Even Michael O'Doherty, that's me, was concerned about me stopping the chemo, Anna recalls. He told me that I told her I should be having the chemotherapy in conjunction with bioenergy treatment, as it would increase my chances of beating the cancer. Now, that's our position. We fundamentally say to people out there, we are very conscious, Pat, of people who have those serious diseases. And while the work we do can be very beneficial and it helps people to deal with the emotion around these types of conditions, it is fundamental that they maintain their medical treatment. That has been our position from 20 years ago. That's our position today. And sometimes, it might be misread that, that we're saying to people that this is all in the mind, and, if you get your mind right, absolutely nothing could be further from the truth. The reality is, this is something that we are very passionate about our work, but we fundamentally see this as an assistant and a complementary to what medical science has to offer, Pat.
Lots of stuff coming in on our text screen, but we'll take a quick break. All right, some of the questions coming in. Can you ask Michael if he's ever treated anyone with rheumatoid arthritis, and have they recovered?
Yeah, Pat, basically we see people coming to our clinics with every conceivable problem, whether it's an autoimmune condition like rheumatoid arthritis or whatever. And, again, the whole purpose, try to alleviate the pain, give people more choice, because I believe fundamentally that's what our society needs. Unfortunately, at the moment, there is a one-way approach in dealing with sickness. I think we have to change that, because sickness is becoming an epidemic, and we just need to have more choice in dealing with it, and we do that.
Can you quote any properly conducted double-blind tests of his therapy? Well, I mean, it's very difficult.
It's impossible.
Like with the drug, you can give someone chalk or the drug, and you have a double-blind test. In this case, you've got to do the therapy.
What we've been dependent on, Pat, over the last 20 years is the people who have been coming to our clinics. You know, the reaction from those people